Hey, what is up guys, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to Gran Turismo 7. A bit of a different video today as I'm here to discuss a few recent changes to the Gran Turismo World Series which have absolutely plagued it ever since they were introduced over the last couple of years or so. I feel like especially since 2024 rolled around, there's been a lot of people that have been in the same boat and that feel pretty much the same way as I do about these changes, that have really voiced their opinions and it's basically gone completely unheard. And my hope is today to spread a bit more awareness about these issues and hopefully we can discuss it in a bit more detail. So let's start off with what this is all about. So if you've been living under a rock, the Gran Turismo World Series is something which is hosted in Gran Turismo games once every year. We do have some sort of pre-season qualifiers and such, but the main meat of it is hosted once a year with online qualifiers and then a bunch of live events before the grand final at the end of the year, typically November, December time. So typically in terms of the GT World Series, it's been pretty much butter smooth, I would say, until up to 2023 or last year, and it has continued kind of on a downward trend into 2024 as Polyphony went ahead and implemented some slight changes. Now this has caused a fair bit of controversy with a lot of online racers. A lot of guys that I talked to that once upon a time would have raced the World Series, even if they're not racing to, get into the live events, have now sort of turned their back on it. They really don't go ahead and enjoy it like they once did. And it does seem that over time, with the changes in 2023 and 2024, that the World Series really does feel like it's not in the place that it was once upon a time. For me personally, in the years prior to 23 and mainly 24, I felt like the entire Gran Turismo community, whether it was just, the people that play maybe once a week or so, or those that might play every day, or even the guys that are up there in the proper World Series level, would all come together and just have a bit of fun, take a bit of serious racing, and it would be some of the best races that you would see in really any racing game. Even in those lower lobbies, you would find people really trying, really racing as clean as possible. It was absolutely fantastic. However, there has been a few changes, and let's talk about the ones in 2023. So the first change I'm going to talk about is for the GT1 drivers. This is drivers ranging from A+, and then obviously S as well if it's the Gran Turismo World Series drivers. Now their entry slots were actually minimized to probably the absolute bare minimum. These will typically range from 6 to 8 till 10 PM, and then we have 3 PM, 5 PM, 7 PM if it's on a weekend. Again, this has been the typical way, only 3 entry slots for the last, I guess, 2 seasons now at this point. And again, it's not great considering that even the fastest drivers in Gran Turismo might have day jobs, they might work shifts, they might have family that they want to prioritize and such. And again, limiting slots to a very limited time period over the range of, anywhere from, 4 to 6 hours just really isn't good enough. Prior to this, there was a bunch of entry slots that players could go ahead and enter. So again, this is causing a lot of controversy ever since it was implemented, as a lot of people are having to now skip rounds or miss rounds because of these very stingent and strict time entry slots. Obviously, going on to compare this with anything from GT2 and GT3 League, they have a bunch of entry slots. So as you can see here, it's 11, 12, 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then obviously 10 PM, finishing at the same time as the GT1 League. But again, there is much more chances for a player to go ahead and actually enter these events. It's much easier for a driver in GT2 or GT3 to actually partake in the Gran Turismo World Series. Again, because of people actually having lives, they're almost punished and unable to actually take part in it. I've seen a lot of people complaining about this since it was implemented, and I can fully see why. Again, as someone that doesn't do YouTube full time and works shifts and has a family and such, I am also in that boat where it's very, very limiting, and sometimes I might have to just outright miss around, meaning that, again, there goes part of, videos and such like that I could actually go ahead and make on this game. Or if you're taking this very seriously, if something comes up, you're missing around and that's it. You ain't going to the Gran Turismo World Series finals. Honestly, in my opinion, I don't understand why Polyphony did this to limit off GT1 in comparison to GT2 and GT3 League drivers. It really just doesn't seem quite right at all. So that's going to lead me into my second point, once again affecting GT1 drivers. I believe it's completely different for GT2 and GT3 drivers, and that is heavy damage. Once again, I believe this was implemented at the beginning of 2023. So I guess from an outside perspective, it's very obvious why heavy damage was implemented. This is to stop the amount of incidents on track, hopefully slowing drivers down, making them more careful and more planning in terms of overtaking and the on-track cleanliness. However, there has been a major downside ever since heavy damage was introduced, and I feel like it's worse now than it's ever been. So when it was first introduced, you saw a lot of drivers being much more careful when it came to overtaking. Again, you could end up either damaging yourself or damaging the other driver and wiping yourself both out of the race. With heavy damage, you must pit to get that damage off. If not, you are risking around about 1 to 2 seconds per lap, even with the most minor amount of damage. Again, this is different from what you see in GT2 or GT3, where you'll take the damage for a short amount of time, and then maybe within 15 to 20 seconds that damage is fully repaired and off the car once again. So again, you must pit to get rid of that damage. Maybe not too much of a nuisance if you're on a strategy where, I don't know, maybe you're doing one lap on the hards or you're coming right to the end of your strategy. However, if you're right at the end of the race and someone just a little, touch and it gives you that aero damage, that is your race pretty much done for. You can guarantee in those final few laps, you are going to drop down that order like an absolute brick. So you may be wondering, well, what's the problem then? If it's just a skill issue, surely that isn't, really anything that's plaguing the game. Well, the issue actually comes from the fact that even in these A+, S lobbies and such, the damage and some of the driving standards that is going on is absolutely intentional. The amount of times I've lost count of being in a Nations Cup race or a Manufacturers Cup race, and I've seen people purposely causing damage in the final few laps, and especially if you get it right, you can avoid getting the damage yourself, just to take a win or just to get that podium position is absolutely unbelievable. This happens far too often, and I feel like this year in 2024 it's worse than it ever was even last year, and that is due to another change that I'll mention in a minute. So again, even in these higher tier lobbies, they are supposed to be the top standard of Gran Turismo, you will still find players purposely damaging each other to ruin each other's races. It's just absolutely ridiculous, and I feel like once again it is definitely worse than it's ever been this year. So that's going to lead me into the main key issue of 2024 when it comes to the Gran Turismo World Series. Again, as soon as this was announced, I saw a bunch of the sort of World Series drivers kind of having an opinion on it over on Twitter that, the World Series just isn't in a good place, blah, 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 blah. And then I sort of looked into it and I kind of realized exactly why. Not only is the, driver selection smaller overall, I'm pretty sure this year, as you can see, when it comes to the online qualifiers, there is almost zero time to get proper meaningful practice in. As you can see, in terms of the Nations Cup, that ran from round 1 on the 17th of April and was completely finished in terms of those online qualifiers by round 6 on the 4th of May, with races being on a Wednesday and a Saturday. Overall, these shorter times have just caused the racing to go completely downhill. People are in a rush, and maybe it's just down to the absolute lack of practice, but I would say overall this has had a massive knock-on in terms of the driving standards. Again, like I've mentioned, in 2024, the driving standards seem to be at the worst they've ever been, and I can only think it's just due to the absolute lack of practice. The amount of times, even accidentally, I've seen cars just overshoot it, possibly from lack of practice, and then wipe out 2, 3, 4 competitors, including themselves as well, has just been absolutely ridiculous. I honestly feel like this whole rush of the online qualifiers has really dropped the overall, driving standards of the game to the absolute minimum, even in those top lobbies. Again, once upon a time, the GT World Series felt like something that really brought the community together. However, I feel like, especially in 2024, with these changes that have been implemented since 2023, the whole World Series itself just doesn't feel as great as it once did. Driving standards are on the floor. Some of the changes, again, are causing competitors to completely miss out on these amazing events. And again, it just feels like it's just not in a great place. It really feels like a bit of a rush job this year. And hopefully for 2025, Polyphony just review some of these changes and maybe revert them. Again, heavy damage, causing competitors to be completely wiped out on purpose, the whole rush of the online qualifiers, and again, the fact that the entry slots have been completely reduced to a minimum and haven't been changed for 2024 just seems like a massive shame that people actually have to miss out. Anyway, massive thank you to you guys at home watching. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. If there's anything else you'd love to see changed in the GT World Series, then be sure to leave it down in the comments below. Anyway, take care guys, peace.